So here we are at the collective distributed intelligence pattern. So I'm going to read the heart and then I'll riff about some manifestations of that and implications of that. So first, here's the heart, the effort to describe this briefly. Many diverse individuals and groups have intelligence and resources to apply to shared situations. So minimize alienation, domination, and conformity while encouraging and creatively engaging many diverse voices and players. Enable them to call forth, organize, and tap their vast collective intelligence, resourcefulness, and parallel processing capacity for better solutions. So this is pretty dense. This is trying to jam a lot in there. But one of the most important things to get from this pattern is to get beyond the understanding, the common understanding that intelligence is something that's inside people's heads. Intelligence is basically a capacity to learn, to solve problems, to understand things in ways that actually make sense in the world. And this can happen collectively. You know, groups can be intelligent, whole societies can be intelligent. There's lots of different collective manifestations of intelligence. So we're looking at that phenomenon of collective intelligence as it's distributed. Many people are engaging in this collective intelligence generating activity or capacity. And among the many interesting things to think about that are the parallels between individual intelligence and collective intelligence, where you have, for example, perception. You know, perception is part of intelligence. You have to be able to see what's there in order to think about it. Memory is part of intelligence. Reflection, that's what most people think of, and learning, things like that. But at the collective level, like perception, you have all over the world, there are sensors, scientific sensors, and people gathering statistics and all that. So this is like a collective form of perception. And databases and libraries, these are forms of collective memory. And the arts and philosophy, etc., these can be considered collective forms of reflection. And of course, like scientific research and other forms of research are learning, collective learning, and also just the massive experience of a whole society or group. Things happen collectively to that whole society or group, and people talk about that, and there's commentaries and blah blah blah, and all that is a form of collective learning. So this is another part of the leap. You leap from individual intelligence to what collective intelligence is all about, and there's all these different ways of manifestations of that we can study. I've been studying collective intelligence for about 30 years, and it's fascinating. But I'm going to point to particular phenomenon that are more recent. It's like the whole idea of open source, and like Wikipedia, having lots of people stepping in to do things together and having things set up so that they can do that. Like there's many online collaboration tools. This is a new form and increased capacity for collective distributed intelligence. And crowdsourcing, you can crowd fund things. There's companies that have an engineering problem or a marketing problem or something, and they say, we'll give $10,000 to whoever comes up with the best solution to this and put it out into the world. And all sorts of people compete to come up with something, and whoever wins, the company's got thousands of responses to their question. And for $10,000, that was cheap for them. They may just offer $1,000, whatever. I'm just saying that they are gathering, sourcing all this thinking. This is the parallel processing talked about. Many people are thinking about this and feeding it into a central location. And there's the evaluation, the rating systems that exist in so many things, and voting, people responding to different choices or options that are presented to them, Some of them are built in. Some of them are like, here's a specific activity. We're going to do this survey. Please put in your, your answers to this. And voting, the whole voting elections for, representatives or ballot initiatives or whatever. Those are all forms of collective distributed intelligence. But there's a really interesting concept called stigmergy, which is taken from the study of insects, where like in an ant colony, ants will leave traces of chemicals behind them, and those chemicals have meaning to other ants that come up afterwards. So like here's a thing that says, I'm on my way to a food source, and the other ants, you end up in your house, you suddenly see this line of ants showing up, coming towards your honey jar or whatever. And that's because the ants who discovered the honey jar are walking back then it's not walking back to make an announcement. Sort of bees do that. Bees come back and make an announcement. These guys are laying out this trail of things that say, this is a pathway to great food. And the ants that are wandering around that cross over this thing go, oops, I'm going to stop wandering around. I'm going to move along this chemical trail. And there's a funny way in which that's what's happening on Amazon. You go and you look at a particular product and they say, other people who looked at this product also looked at this, and other people who bought this product also bought this. Those are very much like the chemical trails the ants lay, and they direct your attention in particular ways and often direct your behavior in particular ways. So all the things, there's many, well, in the resource column, you'll see many other kinds of online tools that use people's individual responses to add up to collective responses. Networks are based on collective distributed intelligence. There are people sharing information who are all share a particular interest or focus, even if it's funny cat videos. It's like there's all this parallel processing going on, feeding this stuff into a common place. Networks that are working on public issue do this. It's not just cat videos, all kinds of networks. And I wrote a book called Participatory Sustainability, which is the complexity of what it would take to build a truly sustainable society. That crosses over so many realms, so many issues, so many domains, so many places, so much details of everything. It's just like unbelievably complex. And in order to truly engage that, you can't just do a top-down thing. It's way too complex for that. So having participatory, having as many different people, groups, levels of government, whatever, how many of these can you all engage in this effort to build a sustainable society? It basically requires that level. We've never had an issue that's quite that gigantic. So tying participation, sustainability together, the necessity for collective distributed intelligence if you're going to do sustainability. There are participatory activities that didn't exist quite in the same way before. Things like citizen journalism and citizen science. There's a group called Journalism That Matters. It tries to bring journalism down into the community. You have your newsroom is in the library, and people from the community can walk into the newsroom with stories or work with professional journalists, to say nothing of the whole social media world, which is also a form of citizen journalism, and cell phone videos, how much the whole police abuse of power being recorded on cell phones, because everybody's got cell phones. Most cell phones have the capacity to take videos or pictures, and all of that being fed through social media. It's like whole journalism field has changed because of the electronics that we have available. Citizen science there's many, like people who do bird watching to count up birds, people who are measuring the chemicals in their local streams, These are just ordinary citizens, and putting that information into a collective database. People who are mapping potholes in their community streets and putting them into the government to here fix up these potholes. There's just lots of participatory gathering and digesting of information going on. A book called Wisdom of Crowds popularized the idea of prediction markets, where people make guesses about things. And in a way, it's sort of like the stock market, but it can be about anything. And sometimes they're actually financially supported. Financially supported in the sense of you're making a bet that it's going to turn out this way. This is where the field in which the next big innovation is going to be. This is where the next terrorist attack is going to be. This is who's going to run for president. You know, you make a bet, and there's financial results, you know, feedback you get if you succeed in your bet. And research that was described in Wisdom of Crowds shows there's extraordinary accuracy to independent people putting in their guesses about things, including things they could never, like a submarine sank. People guess where that submarine is, and they end up with a accurate description of where the submarine is, you know, and it's like, what's going on there? But that's another interesting example of collective distributed intelligence. And last but not least in my discussion here is processes, group processes that help generate collective intelligence from the many different, the diversity that's in the room. Open space, which is anybody who's interested in this topic, this question, come on down to this afternoon or 3 days or whatever it is, and we're going to break up into self-organized little groups around specific pieces of that topic, that question, and come together and share whatever we come up with. And that rhythm of break up into a small group, come together, has a digestive power, generating collective intelligence out of individual ways of thinking. And that's also explicit in the process called World Cafe, which breaks people up like in a cafe into little groups, tables of 3, 4, 5 people, all sharing a question. They're all talking about the question, and then, you know, bell goes off and everybody goes to a different table and mixes up. And, you know, they keep doing that through several rounds, and then get together and share what came up that they thought was useful. So everybody can tap into the collective intelligence of the group that's evolved. And dynamic facilitation is a really powerful one, working with a conflicted situation, people who have very different takes on what's going on. And it uses very largely really listening to people well. The feeling heard pattern in this pattern language covers dynamic facilitation to a large degree. But if you have people feel really well heard, the ability of that group to share its insights and to evolve together is another really potent approach. But all of these are doing this many different, you want diversity, that's part of the intelligence. Diverse intelligence and resources to apply to shared situations, whatever that is. And what you don't want in the group is people dropping out, backing away, some people dominating, some people retreating, everybody conforming, there's surface conformity with all these differences pushed down underneath. All of these things I'm talking about are giving space for diversity to show up and get digested by everybody. So that's the essence of this pattern.